Hey, what's up? I figured since I received the question on how I did the lightsaber in this photo that I would take a moment to create a tutorial. Here we have the photo of Vader. As you can see on the left-hand side, I used an LED video photography light. Uh, it was added to the side here to create the glow on the bodies, as if the lightsaber lit up in a dark area. To create the actual glow on the saber, we'll use Photoshop. In Photoshop, we're going to go over to our layers palette. And in the bottom right hand side, click on new layer to create a transparent layer. Here we're going to select the brush tool. And the brush tool you can get to either by clicking on the brush here or just quickly hitting B on your keyboard. The letter B, it just switched you to the brush tool, as you can see. So you need to adjust the foreground color to kind of match the color of the saber. So if you click on in your toolbar here on your foreground background section, click on the foreground color. And I like to do, since we're doing a red saber, to do a very light, almost pinkish color. Of course, adjust this color based on the lightsaber you're working on. If you're doing a green saber, introduce a lot more white into the color and do like a slight green tinted hue. But since we're working on red, we're going to do mostly pink. And I'll leave this up for a second so that you can see what color settings I'm choosing. And then just hit OK. Now with the brush tool selected, we need to adjust the brush size so that it matches the width of the saber. You can see our brush is a little too big. So first, I like to use a round soft brush, and you'll see that a soft round. You can select that and just put your hardness down to 0. And you can either adjust the size here, but that's kind of guessing. You got to keep going guessing. The easiest way to do that is to hit your bracket keys on your keyboard. And those are the keys that are right above enter to the right, directly to the right of P. Right one goes up, left one brings the brush down. You just put your brush over the saber and adjust your brush until it matches the width of the saber, that's pretty good. So what we're going to do now with the foreground color selected, you're going to click on the very end of the saber. Actually, I'm going to bring it down by 1. That's a little better. It's going to just click once here, and that'll put basically just a colored dot. In fact, before we do that, actually, I'm going to bring my hardness up to about 50%. We wanted to show up a little bit more. So 50% hardness should be right. So we'll click on the very end of the saber. There you go, that's a little better. So it'll just put a colored dot. Holding shift on your keyboard, you can click on the very end of the saber, and that'll complete the line. As you can see, I didn't get the entire saber. There's still like a little piece of the red saber sticking out. Don't worry, if your line isn't straight or it doesn't cover the entire saber, you could just hit Control T, and you can actually just adjust the width and adjust the size and even rotate it if need be to adjust. Once you got that saber where you want it, I'm being a little picky here. So about where you want it. And don't worry if even if a little bit of it shows, because when we add the glow, it's going to hide the saber underneath. You can also use your arrow keys on your keyboard to kind of move. Hit Control T again, and then use your arrow keys to kind of move the line where you need it to go. And for me, that's fine. So now we need to duplicate this layer 2 more times. So the easiest way to do that is to make sure the layer is selected and hit Control J twice on your keyboard. And you'll see that it adds 2 additional layers, so you should have 3 copies. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a blur, a Gaussian blur, to the sabers so that they glow. So it simulates a glow. So on the very first layer, the first saber layer, we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And we're going to add about 4 pixels, a radius of 4 pixels, and then hit OK. Then select the second copy, and we're going to do the same thing: filter, blur, Gaussian blur. This time we're going to add about 25 pixels. And as you can see, it's starting to glow. Hit OK. And then, of course, on the last copy, same thing: filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And here we're going to add 40 pixels. And that should add the glow we're looking for. Once we have that glow, we're going to create one more layer. And we need to change our foreground background color first. Just hit the two little buttons here, the default, and that'll get back to black. And we're going to hit on that layer, Control Delete. Yeah, sorry, swap them. Swap the colors, make sure the black is in the background. Hit Control Delete. And then click and drag this layer down behind layer 1. And that'll just show the saber on a black background. So what we're going to do now is, with this layer selected, hold down the Shift key and select the very top saber layer. So you should have all 4 of these layers selected. That's layer 1, layer 1 copy, layer 1 copy 2. Those are all the sabers. And then you're just going to hit Control E to merge them. That'll make it into one layer. You can see. And then the blend mode, which is right above here, should show normal. What we're going to do is select screen, and that'll bring your image back in. And we now have the glow of the saber. So now to get the color we want, because we know pink isn't Vader's color, down at the palettes window here, the layer palette, we're going to go to the create new adjustment layer. So select new adjustment layer, and we're going to go to hue saturation. And that's going to create a hue saturation layer over your layer copy. Now, in order to get the saber color, we need to make this basically what's called a clipping mask. So if you see that, if I hit colorize, I'm going to colorize the whole image. We don't want that. So right at the bottom of this window here, there's a little box with an arrow pointing down. If you click that, that'll create a clipping mask, and it'll only affect the layer that we're working right below it. So now if I hit colorize, you'll see that the lightsaber is changing only. So select colorize, and here we're going to adjust the saturation. So remember, we put a very light pink color. So now adjusting the saturation is actually going to bring out more of the stronger reds. As you can see, it now starting to look more like a glowing lightsaber. We leave hue alone because we have already selected the red for it, and we can adjust the lightness. This will make it a darker red or a lighter red. You don't want to go too far to the right, because then you'll start introducing colors into the entire photo. So just adjust it so that you get the saber color that you prefer. I like to kind of leave it in the middle. And then just adjust the saturation, how dark you want the saber, how light you want the saber. You can go all the way white if you want. You can introduce more reds. And that is it. And now you have a glowing red saber. Hope this helped.